Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. This is kind of a weird episode. One, because of how it came about, but also it's my 1 year anniversary podcast. I didn't mention this before, actually, Bill. It's my 1 year anniversary of doing this show because of pandemic season coming into play and me getting laid off. And so I just want to quickly thank everybody who's checked out the podcast, support the podcast. It's been crazy up to this point, and it's gotten only bigger. And I just want to thank you guys really quick. But today, I am joined by probably the baddest principal around from your childhoods. You know him from Wizards of Waverly Place, The Ringer, and also one of my favorites, Dude, Where's My Car? Yes, I recognize you in that. Is it Bill Chott or Chott? I think it's Chott,
It's
right?
Chott. It's neither. It's Chott.
Chott. God damn it.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to get that one right.
That's all right. There is a TikTok about how to pronounce it, though.
Oh, I should have caught that one. But yeah, Bill, how
you
you
would
doing,
not
man?
be the first person to mispronounce it.
Oh.
I started correcting people about 10 years or so ago. So there were teachers that I would hear them. I would be in their class, and they would be telling me, if you haven't seen the spring musical, you really need to see Bill Chott. And I'd be like, I'm not going to mention it. And then I figured, you know what? It could be adversely affecting my career. So here towards the end of my career, I'm going to start defending my name.
It is the past 10 years. But Bill, I really want to thank you for taking the time to hop on here and talk with me for a little bit, because I never imagined me actually posting stupid stuff on TikTok would end up leading me to interview someone like you. Like, I kind of want to start with TikTok, because how has the platform been for you from, like, when did you get started and kind of how it's been going?
It's interesting. As I started off, I joined TikTok around this time last year because I had been doing a lot of stuff on Facebook. I had this Facebook Live, and every time I'm on any platform, I just call it Live Jive when I do my lives. And that became a kind of a hit on Facebook. I enjoyed it. And people said, you got to do TikTok. And I signed on, but I wasn't sure if it was for me. And I think that was before a lot of an older demographic started joining the platform. I think later on, towards the summer, that started happening a little bit more. And so I felt a little more like, okay, maybe I can belong here. And I didn't fully understand what was going on with, like, lip syncing and the dance moves and things like that. I was like, how do I even do this? But I started really picking it up in October, and I started getting some great response. And I thought to myself, well, you know what? This is a little bit easier than going live for long stretches of time on other platforms. And then, of course, I was used to going live, so I was like, why not do it on TikTok, where it's an even larger audience?
Yeah, I think that's interesting with TikTok, because I noticed that the older demographic kind of came in later, because they started seeing the virality of TikTok and how easy it is to gain followers on that platform. And obviously when they come across you and your resume, like, they're like, oh my God, it's Bill, no way. And then they start engaging. And like, how much of the fans, because we kind of talked about this briefly before we got started here. You mentioned the old demographic, like, mainly recognize you from Wizards. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the majority of people on TikTok, especially the younger ones, know me from Wizards of Waverly Place. And then there's a small little, very vocal community of fans of The Ringer. But those are the most ones. And then I tried just to test the waters to see if anybody would remember the mailman that I did on This Is Us. And some people did, but most of the people were like, "Don't cry. I wish you knew my uncle's a mailman too." And I'm like, "Oh no, they think I'm real." So,
A mailman just trying to go viral.
yep.
Yeah, Bill, you've had a very fascinating career, because I don't usually do like research on guests of mine, because that's a bit of effort, and I try to make this podcast as chill and as stress-free as possible for the people attending and myself. So kind of looking back at your resume, what made you want to get into acting kind of from the beginning to now?
It was the only thing I ever really wanted to do ever since I was a kid. Like, I remember when I was 5 years old, they had a video camera set up in our gym class, and kids would, and I think they just wanted to, like, test it out and see what it was, what they could use it for. but kids were like doing the balance beam or something like that. And then once they did the balance beam, like off here, they'd come up into the camera, say their name, say their grade, and then walk off and get back into the line to do it again. Well, I was cutting in that line. I was, moving in front of kids saying, "Hey, I'm Billy," which is how everybody knew me back then. And I knew back then that it was important for me to be seen on TV. I always loved the sound of laughter coming from our living room. So even, when late night comedy, which my dad was a big fan of, Saturday Night Live in those early days, those first few seasons especially, SCTV, and there was a show called Fernwood Tonight with Martin Mull and Fred Willard that was mostly improvised. That used to come on after a show called Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman. And so all those shows, I knew everybody in them was involved in improvisation. So it was weird that at 5 or 6 years old, I already knew I wanted to do like late night comedy. I wanted to be an improviser. I wanted to act. I knew I wanted to be in TV and film. And that's, I think it's been a foregone conclusion. And then my first play was in, school. I did a play when I was about 8 years old. And then I knew for sure I was hooked because my dad saw me in the play and said, "Well, I'm not going to stand in your way." So.
And how old were you when you did that play?
I think about 8 or 10 years old. I honestly, I'm really bad at looking back at my life. Like even when people ask me about Dana Carvey, I'm like, was that 96 or 97? I don't know. But I think it was about 8 or 10 years old.
Okay, so 8 or 10 years old, and your dad looks at you and says, "I'm not going to stand your." That's so fascinating because I imagine so many parents, and I'm sure you've definitely come across this. Like a lot of parents are very skeptical when their child wants to get into the world of acting. What was it? Something in your performance, or just your passion towards the craft itself?
I think it was a little bit of each that he saw that I did a great job in it. He saw how excited I was to do it. But also, truth be told, there was a part of his life that he wanted to try out acting. He was studying to be a Roman Catholic priest, and he was in a lot of the plays in school. And there's a thing in St. Louis called the Muni Opera, which is an outdoor musical theater venue. And he auditioned and got a spot as one of the chorus members, which meant he would be in the chorus of touring productions that were coming through St. Louis, some of which were coming straight from Broadway back in the day. And so he was really excited about that. And then he was told that it was unbecoming of a seminarian. And so he, I guess the best way to put it, he was asked not to do that. And so he focused on the path to the priesthood for a while. Obviously, he didn't wind up doing that because he met my mother and fell in love and got married. But he wound up becoming a writer in industrial theater. So he would write for corporations, and sometimes he'd write even complete like Broadway style musicals for like the Timken Tapered Roller Bearing Company. And I was exposed to theater. He was a little bit afraid to have me involved in it, but once he saw my passion for it, and I guess my talent as well, he was very encouraging of it.
Yeah, being that kid that always wanted to get in front of that webcam and just I'm just so fascinated because was it something that like you just loved being it's going to sound a bit egocentric, but what like being the center of attention, being everyone look at me, everyone look at me, look how funny I am.
Yeah, because I would do impressions. I was 5 years old doing impressions of people I had never seen on stage before. I was doing impressions of Humphrey Bogart, and I had never seen a Humphrey Bogart movie. I had seen Rich Little and like Jack Gorshin do impressions of him, or Frank Gorshin rather, impressions of him, and I was like, oh, that's how you do an impression of that person, and people will laugh at you, and you could be in front of them. And I learned magic tricks. Magic was a large part of my life, still is a very large part of my life. I perform at the Magic Castle here in Los Angeles with a partner of mine. Yeah.
I've wanted to go to the Magic Castle forever. I want to go to LA in the next couple of years because I'm in Canada. I don't know if you knew that or not, but
I did not know that.
Well, it's cold, but
end of interview. Sorry.
No, I was always fascinated by the Magic Castle because I know there was such like a not a cult culture almost, but like almost like a very tight knit family kind of culture. Like how accurate would you say that would be?
I'd say that'd be definitely accurate. It has become a little bit less so over the past 15, 20 years or so because it was bought by a corporation. It's still
Hmm.
managed by people who have been around since the very beginning. The Larson family. It started with Milt Larson and his family, and I've got to meet most of the Larson family at this point, and I've met a lot of people through the Magic Castle that I wouldn't have met otherwise. I met AJ, who is this guy, used to be a stand-up comic, and now he came out with his own graphic novel and a book about schmoozing, and he was actually the first Ronald McDonald.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he was a Ringling Brothers clown, and so I've met some amazing people as a result of being associated with the Magic Castle. I'm not a member still. I should be, and it would be very possible for me to. There's just been this thing that I felt somehow that I'm not yet worthy. I don't know what that's rooted in.
I think that's almost very respectable and humble in a way that you have such an appreciation for what the Magic Castle is that you don't feel you deserve to be a part of it.
Yeah, in this weird way. Um, because I always find shortcuts. I'm good with magic because I'm good at distracting people. I'm good at engaging them and telling a story. But I know there are people who have spent their entire lives getting better at manipulation with cards and coins, and I could do card tricks, but most of it is not manipulation. It's distraction, self-working tricks, and minor sleights.
You mentioned meeting some fascinating people. Who was the most fast or some of the most fascinating people that you met because of the Magic Castle?
Irene Larson, who passed away recently, another one of the Larsons. She was like, what she's, she was the matriarch of the first family of magic, the Larson family. She was somebody, AJ, whom I mentioned earlier. My friend Dave Cox is a fixture around there, and he and I are partners. We do an act together called the Charlatans, and it's magic, music, and improv. And so I met him as a result of it. Just like common everyday magicians who maybe you wouldn't know and maybe haven't, you might have seen them on a TV special or something like that, but you might not know who they are. But fascinating performers. Siegfried and Roy, of course. Trying to think of some more. Penn Jillette, but I met him outside of the castle. Trying to think of other people that I've met. Just
What was Teller there or no?
people. Teller was there, but not in the same moment. I was at
Ah,
the Just for Laughs festival in Montreal.
hey.
Yeah, and I was. It was right after I had done the Dana Carvey show, and so it was my first time going to a comedy festival with like some serious clout. And so I was able to hang out in a lot of fun green rooms and some interesting parties. And so at separate parties, at one party I met Penn, at another party I met Teller, and Penn, he'll talk your ear off no matter who you are, and made a bet with a friend of mine that she would never touch an IBM because she was like, she's a graphic designer. She said, "There's no reason I'll ever touch anything other than Mac." And so he made a bet with her. She never collected on it, but she could have. That she never touched an IBM computer in all those years. Teller, I was afraid that he was going to say something and ruin it for me. I had seen him in the movie Long Gone as an actor, so I'd heard his voice and I was, desensitized to that. But I had just seen him perform as Teller, and so I didn't want. I was like, I told him all the wonderful things I wanted to tell him about him, and then I kind of like stepped away, and I think he was like, "But wait, you just said that. Don't you want to have a conversation with me?"
No, it'll ruin it. Ruin the
Well,
magic. I bet that's
Teller,
happened to him
don't
a
tell me
lot.
anything.
I bet a lot of people just walk away from him because they don't want that illusion ruined.
I'll bet that's the case. I'm
Which is
sure I'm
also
not the first.
which is also quite sad when you think about it.
Yeah, it's true.
So you're into magic and early acting, and then so let's move forward a bit. And when did you like start landing your earlier kind of gigs in the acting world?
I think most of them came through Second City. So I studied at Second City in Chicago, And like I said, that was something my dad, when he wrote those industrial shows, every time he did a gig that was in Chicago, like Hormel or International Harvester, who might have had like headquarters in Chicago, he would use Second City actors. And of course, he was a big fan of the original SCTV, all done in Canada. And so I started performing in Second City, toured with Second City's touring company. My touring company was Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Rachel Dratch,
Wow.
Ali Faranakian, who started the People's Improv Theater, a bunch of amazing people. But just by starting to do shows there, I had opportunities where like agents would come up to me and ask me if I wanted to be represented commercially, and of course I did. And then that's where I was seen for both Saturday Night Live and for the Dana Carvey show. So I was fortunate enough that I never really had to submit myself. So many actors have to go and self-submit and knock on a bunch of doors and wear out a bunch of shoe leather. And I realized that I'm atypical. That things were a little bit easier for me. Through chance or luck or maybe a little bit of talent, I never had to do that. And so a lot of those doors were open through Second City.
Yeah, and I think that's a fascinating thing because it usually definitely is obviously talent. You don't need to sell yourself that short, but
Right.
it's as you do. But it's definitely a lot of right place, right time. Like this podcast is usually primarily like a lot of music industry stuff because I have a music industry background. And I deal with a lot of entertainment stuff that way, and so it's interesting to see the similarity because I know a lot of people that same thing. They're trying to get signed to a label or an agent or whatever it is, and then there's those few acts that stand out in the crowd or do something that draws the attention to them because that's something that clearly you've always had from young age to then and now. And it's just fascinating to see that. Yeah, I wanted to touch on Saturday Night Live because I've always been fascinated with that show. I've heard so many things, obviously, from the legacies to obviously the much more recent stuff, especially with like when Chappelle's coming on and all that kind of stuff. What was your history with Saturday Night Live?
I auditioned for Saturday Night Live in 94, 95. And I I didn't know what to do. I didn't know which impressions to do, which characters to do. And I think part of that was I still wasn't a completely seasoned entertainer. I hadn't put up a review. I hadn't like from scratch written a bunch of things all by myself. So when I did my audition for Saturday Night Live, I got a call back. They flew me out to New York. And one of the things that I did was my impression of Jackie Gleason taking a difficult crap. And there's actually, you can see on Hulu, there's a documentary about the Dana Carvey show that mentions all of this. So I did that impression, and at first my audition was killing. I was doing my Rush Limbaugh, which is a pretty good, solid impression. Of course, it's absolutely useless now.
Or it could be more relevant.
Or perhaps, yeah. Broadcasting straight from hell. Anyway, so I didn't. I thought it was going very well, but then I did that, and then crickets, and then I didn't get Saturday Night Live at that time. A year or so later, I'm auditioning for the Dana Carvey show. As far as I know, nobody knew who the heck I was. I'm waiting in the lobby. Robert Smigel comes out, taps me on the knee and says, "Hey, Bill, could you do me a favor when you come in there? Could you do your impression of Jackie Gleason taking a difficult crap?" And I was like, no, that was like poison to my SNL audition. He goes, "I know, I was watching it when it was happening. I loved it. I think Dana will love it. Can you please do it?" And so that was almost what cinched my Dana Carvey show audition.
That's fascinating. Considering, sorry to interrupt, but like that's fascinating because the fact that SNL took that impression and didn't like it, but Dana Carvey did. That's
yeah. Well, like I said, they were into the fact that they knew Lauren didn't like it, so it was kind of that like, see what Dad doesn't like, we like it. That us versus them sort of humor.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we started doing the ambiguously gay duo on the Dana Carvey show. And it was one of the more successful bits from that show, so much so that Lorne Michaels wanted to start doing that on Saturday Night Live. So I kind of got in through the back door. We were asked to do voices, and Steve Carell and Stephen Colbert were the voice of Ace and Gary, and I played the announcer and a lot of the other supporting roles. And so we all wound up getting on Saturday Night Live through the back door, and none of us were ever hired as writer performers on that show, which was odd. I kind of thought that we'd kind of be like next in line and be like, here we go. That didn't really happen. So when I moved out to Los Angeles, we would go to the Capitol Records building at a patch through and like basically stand where Frank Sinatra used to stand and record those through. And yeah, that lasted for like 7 or 8 years or something like that. And haven't done one of those in quite a long time. But that's how I wound up on Saturday Night Live, just as a voice entertainer and a writer, never as a on camera talent or a staff writer.
Yeah, but still, that's such a massive thing nonetheless. Like,
oh yeah,
and it's also
just
amazing.
Dream. I found out about it because they took the actual one that we did on Dana Carvey and just aired it on Saturday Night Live, and we weren't asked about it. We had signed our rights away to it, I guess. Weren't asked about it or anything. And my tradition is popcorn with Saturday Night Live. I always make a batch of popcorn, so I'm going up to get more popcorn at the beginning of Saturday Night Live, and then a commercial break. I'm coming back from commercial. I hear my own voice. This week's episode, it takes two to tango, and I'm like, what? I'm on Saturday Night Live.
Oh,
it surprised me.
Oh, I can imagine. And the fact that similar to getting that early agency thing and you getting the opportunity for having someone submit for you, the fact that you found another way around in a non-traditional route. Has your entire career been a lot of that, or how much of it has followed a more traditional kind of path?
No, I would say almost all of it has fallen into my lap. When I did the movie The Ringer, I had been doing the character that people know as Thomas as a character named Frederick for the longest time. And so when they were auditioning for that movie, they said, you have to see Bill Chott. So people told them that they had to bring me in and see me do my character, which wound up being a great fit for it. As soon as I walked in character with the glasses on and everything, read for Barry Blaustein, who directed the film. And he said, you're in my movie. I don't know where you are, but you're in my movie. And so even that, I could tell you a fun story about Wizards of Waverly Place. At the time, I had bought a house back in St. Louis, which is my home city, with my first wife, from whom I am divorced now, because she hated it here in Los Angeles. So it kind of looked to me like I was kind of like settling into life back in my hometown, just kind of collecting residuals as I near retirement or whatever, even though I was only 40 at the time. I don't know why I sound like, hey, retiring. But I was doing a lot of voiceover work, which I figured I could do from just about anywhere. And I did in some cases. And then I got this audition for a movie called All About Steve with Sandra Bullock. And so I thought, okay, here's a shot. Maybe I'll get this movie and it'll be another shot in the arm for my career, and I can do a lot more back and forth on camera. And so I prepared for the audition, flew all the way out there, and right before I took off, I got an email and a call from my agent saying, hey, while you're in town, I know you're busy and you got this big audition, but while you're in town, we've got this Disney show and they want you to read for a guest star role, possibly recurring. We don't know what's going to happen with it. What's the show? Wizards of Waverly Place, they call it. It hasn't aired yet. I was like, listen, my priority is this Sandra Bullock movie. I really want to be in this movie. I would be one of the leads in this film. And so they said, just show up there for us. I said, look at my time schedule. I've got to rent a car. I got to drive in rush hour traffic to Los Angeles. By the time I get there, I'm going to be too late for the audition, and I'm going to miss my coaching appointment that I had for the big audition. Just show up for us. Okay. So I did. I was an hour late. I called. I said, okay, I'm here. I'm an hour late, of course. And they said, no, go in. They're waiting for you still. I was like, what? I went in there. I read for them. I was on my way off the lot, and I got a call that said, you're on hold. We'll tell you whether you're booked tomorrow. And I was like, what? And I was told that I was cast for the role of Mr. Larry Tate faster than any other person had ever been cast on a Disney Channel show.
Whoa.
And I still didn't understand the gravity of it because I was there for a completely different project. I was like, hey, I picked up another job along the way. Now let's get the big fish, which of course I didn't get. Never did the movie with Sandra Bullock. And I wound up, spending the next 5 years, 4 seasons on Wizards of Waverly Place. The role that I'm most known for was a fluke, one which I never prepared for. I was not off book for my audition.
That's just amazing to think that. Yeah, well, yeah. One, working for Disney is a massive thing, and just for the audition, I'm curious, how different was an audition process for a Disney show versus something else? Because is there much of a difference, or not really?
Just the style in which you perform. It's a little bit more presentational, a little bit more over the top, I think. At least for a lot of the adult characters, because they have to be like, there's a spaghetti creature in my living room, sort of thing, So the kids get to play everything off and be sarcastic and nonchalant or whatever. But there's that little bit of a difference, but it was the same sort of process. I'd walk in the room, record with a casting director. There wasn't even a producer in the room, which is why I was surprised that they had cast me so quickly. And then I found out, one of the exec producers was Peter Murrieta, who was a brilliant writer and producer that I knew from the Second City. We knew each other through a bunch of mutual connections from Chicago, and he had a theater here in Los Angeles called Bang, and I would do shows at Bang. So I think that helped. And plus, as I said before we started this, I've had I've been pretty uncontroversial. I haven't been in a lot of things that really rocked the boat and shocked people or done many things like that. So I think it was pretty easy to look at my social media, which was hardly existent at that time, and my career and go like, oh, this guy's a no-brainer. We can hire him and know that he's not going to, at least in the short term, make us look bad for hiring him.
Yeah, because Disney is prolific for those like really intense background checks and like making sure everything is clean and not dotted all the I's and cross all the T's. So it's fascinating, and Disney is a huge thing I want to talk. And Alexa, my partner, who you chatted with briefly before we got started here, she had a few questions, and obviously I kind of had very similar questions, but like. What did working for Disney do for your career? Because you mentioned it was a fluke, it was something nonchalant. You were focusing on this Sandra Bullock movie. Like, how would you say that being on that show has affected your career now?
I'm not sure that it has to a large extent, although it's starting to, and I'll go into that in just a minute. But like, there weren't a lot of big projects between then and now. I was in a feature film. But that was through local connections back in St. Louis because it was shot back in the Midwest. It was called Marshall's Miracle. I've done some more animation, just small bit parts in animation. Trying to think of any other. There was a lot of commercial work and things like that, but there weren't that many big roles. And then all of a sudden, I started coming back as Mr. Larry Tate on TikTok, and some of those people who grew up watching me on that show are now casting directors, producers, writers. And so I have now that we're waiting for some of these COVID restrictions to lift, I have 2 TV shows and 2 movies waiting in the hopper for me to step into that I didn't even have to audition for. So the world's changing a little bit, and I think partially as a result of TikTok and a result of people who knew me from Wizards of Waverly Place being reminded like, oh, that guy's still alive? Because I even did a TikTok about that. Somebody thought them and their friends saw somewhere on Twitter that they thought I had died. So they binge watched Wizards, or at least all my episodes, and ate a pizza in memory of me.
Pretty respectful solidarity.
But so I think now a lot of those young people who are now, heading up the industry know who I am and know that I'm still alive. So I would say, partially due to Larry Tate, but also partially due to TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok has given like a revitalization for a lot of Disney Channel people I've noticed, because like yourself, and I've seen a few other Disney Channel former actors kind of pop up, and they're starting to get in. And that's the fascinating thing about nostalgia. It's the nostalgia is what's making the money, but it's also making people create opportunities and look for those people so they can relive kind of their childhood in a way.
Yeah. And I think now people need nostalgia more than ever because, we're in a very unusual world, probably maybe a little bit more so here in America than in Canada. But
I mean, I was going to say it, but yeah,
it has a lot to do with the American way of life. But I think people feel like, I wish we could return to something normal. And so all those Disney Channel shows felt like something normal. They were, for a lot of kids, they were younger than high school age. So they felt, oh, this is what I'm going to be, So this is what life is going to be like. So now for us to be able to say once again, oh, this is what life is going to be like. It's going to be normal again. I think it has that effect on some people.
And that's the amazing thing about platforms like Disney Plus and all these streaming platforms. It's allowed us to take a step back and watch and relive those memories. And like Alexa mentioned to you about like that feeling of like, thank you for providing so much entertainment. And I want to thank you for that as well. Cause like, it was the same for me. Like your character, when I saw you on TikTok, I immediately was like, I got to do something with this because I loved Mr. Larry Tate. He was one of my favorite characters. And then when you connected, I literally looked at Alexa and I didn't scream externally, but internally. Alexa screamed externally, and because when I mentioned it, I'm like, oh, Bill replied, and she's like, what? And so I just want to thank you for that and providing a lot of my generation just with so much laughter and joy, because that's definitely something that helped me get through childhood as well.
Also, well, thank you.
Bolo tie was until I saw that show.
You introduced Alexa to bolo ties.
A lot of people have said that. They have said, it's because of you that I know what a bolo tie is. So I even came out with a T-shirt that has a bolo tie on it, available on my TikTok, my bio link, and I knew about bolo ties and I had seen them a bunch because I guess still in the 70s they were kind of a big thing. Like I just saw a documentary the other day about Bing Russell, Kurt Russell's dad, when he started up the Portland Mavericks, and his big thing was wearing bolo ties. So I grew up in an era when still a lot of people and a lot of business people were wearing bolo ties. And it's also a unisex, neckwear. A lot of women, and it was a thing in the 80s too. A lot of women would wear bolo ties. So I was surprised that people associate me with it just because I happened to wear one. But I think for some people of your generation, it was the first bolo tie you might have seen.
No, absolutely. And it made so much sense for the character. And I think that's part of the reason. And I don't want to say the bolo tie made the character, but like that was definitely a reason the character stood up, because everyone was like, what is that character wearing? I was like, was the bolo tie Disney's idea or your idea?
It was not my idea.
Oh.
My guess is that it was Peter Murrieta, the guy that I told you about earlier, because there's also a line in one of the episodes that says, it's the state neckwear of Arizona. And he's from Arizona, or he went to college in Arizona. So I think he even confirmed that one time on TikTok. But it had to have been Peter. It was not me. I came up with some of the sayings and some of the things that you hear me say because they were kind enough to allow me to improvise. Never at a table read when we're trying out the material, but when we were just, working it out on its feet, I'd throw in a buckaroo or whatever here or there, and it would make its way in, and then all of a sudden people are saying this back to me like 20 years later, not 20, but whatever, a good number of years later here on TikTok. So...
And that's the amazing thing. And I'm also fascinated because you're also seeing a lot of revivals of a lot of these shows. They're starting to remake a lot of these shows. Are doing like new adaptions of it. I know you can't say anything because I know the mouse can have a very tight grip on certain things with NDAs. Has there been any sort of circulation or possible whisperings of some sort of revival of Wizards, or maybe even a Larry Tate spinoff, because I would happily watch that.
If they offered me that, I would snap it up immediately because that's guaranteed work. And like, here's the thing: if they do a reboot, that's not guaranteed work for Larry Tate necessarily, because I'm not sure if Disney, maybe they did realize what an asset I was, but like I was always a guest star, and I never got a raise over 4 seasons. Never got a raise in my pay, and I was invited and then summarily disinvited to the very first ever D23, the Disney convention out here in Anaheim, and I was like, I understand why I was invited. I don't understand why I was disinvited. And if I hadn't been invited all along, I would have been cool with that too. Because like I said, wasn't technically a cast member, didn't expect it, but the fact that I was invited and then disinvited was that so that I wouldn't come back and ask for more money, you know? So maybe they were aware that I was of some worth, but didn't want me to know my own worth. I know that sounds crazy and like superstitious and whatever to say, but you know, Disney's smart about business. So, but if they did a reboot of Wizards, although a lot of people, a lot of fans think of me as part of that show and like an inseparable part of it, unless I was separated by my own spinoff or whatever, that it could be done without me, that they would they want to know about high school anymore? You know, would it be weird if Alex had kids and they went to Tribeca Prep? It doesn't even seem to make sense, you know? So I think the odds are I might not be involved in a reboot or updating it if they needed to. I would love to do it and would do it in a heartbeat if they asked me.
Looking back on your time on Wizards, like what fond memories do you have? Like either like a certain episode that you really enjoyed, or just like a behind the scenes moment with some of the cast. Like I'm so curious about the culture of on the set of a Disney show, because you hear so many things, but also you don't hear so many things because it can be very hush hush.
Right. Things weren't that hush hush back then because people weren't aware of how negatively potentially social media posts could affect a show. They just knew, there's this new form of communication that primarily kids use. We want them to use it. So they didn't stop people from using cell phones backstage. People could take pictures and put them up on the web and talk about what they saw in the audience. They weren't restricted at all. So that aspect of it, there's they do tend to keep things pretty quiet. But what was your original question? I think I've gone off on a tangent.
I do that all the time. No, like looking back, like what are some like the more positive kind of memories or just experiences that you had?
Yeah. I don't have any negative memories for sure. Some of the positive memories, just fun things, like we were there on set and they had like a tortilla stand where they were making fresh tortillas for us on the soundstage. Like an ice cream bar, and it turned out they had ice cream bars, like a whole sundae bar with all the different toppings, whatever you could want, and a soft serve machine, and also scooped, every kind of way you could imagine, like an ice cream pig out.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, and Nick Austin was such a little kid, you couldn't stop him from eating as much ice cream as he wanted. So I remember fun things like that. I remember just like playing ping pong behind the scenes. I love playing ping pong. They had a ping pong table. Just fun things like that. Do I have a specific memory about an episode? Oddly, no. I remember moments like that more, and moments like the table reads. We'd come in there and sit down at a table and read through the episodes, and it was always this like, it's like catching up with a friend over brunch, because that's literally what it would be. I wouldn't have seen the cast for a few weeks or sometimes months, depending upon, what the time frame was. And, we'd talk and catch up a little bit, and then do the read through. And those were the moments that I remember the most, is the table reads and the fun little extras, and oddly enough, for some reason, food.
Yeah,
I do like food.
that was the one thing I also heard about a lot from other former Disney stars is the craft services was always very top notch. Like, and you mentioning the Sunday bar and fresh tortilla. I didn't expect fresh tortillas as an answer.
It was amazing.
Oh, that's so great. To kind of wrap this thing up, I kind of want to touch on a couple of things. I mentioned briefly at the start, you were in Dude, Where's My Car, which is possibly, it's in my top 5. It wasn't that, here's the thing. I know it wasn't that good of a movie and people are going to rinse me for it. And I know that, but it was still so good. And just finding out that you had even just a small role in it, like what was that experience like, just for me as a fan? People listening, if you don't want to listen to this part, this is just for me.
That's cool. It was fun, and actually, here's what I think is part of the success, and also because the word "dude" was in it, it became a punchline. Blah blah blah. Because like, "Dude, where's my car?" or "Dude, where's my election?" And so it became this punchline. But I think if people go back and watch it, especially considering this is one of Ashton Kutcher's early performances, he was on that '70s show. But he did a great job. Sean did a great job. They had a great ensemble. And the writing was like, I was a big fan of Abbott and Costello growing up. So the bits about, what does your tattoo say? Sweet, all that back and forth, the whole, and then, that stuff was all like classic vaudeville, classic Abbott and Costello, classic comedy. And I think that was why it succeeded, is because nobody had heard jokes like that in 20 to 30 years. Only now it was in a stoner perspective, kind of in the way that Cheech and Chong were. And maybe they were hoping it would become that sort of a franchise. But it was hot as hell in those bubble wrap jumpsuits.
I could imagine.
Me and Michael Bauer, both big guys in basically a portable sauna. We were just sweating the entire time. In the first few weeks of the shoot, wardrobe didn't want to make a bunch of bubble wrap jumpsuits, so they didn't let us sit down in them. We would have to take them all the way off if we needed to go anywhere or go to the bathroom, and then put them all the way back on. It was hell. And Danny Leiner, the director, rest in peace. He passed away since then. He was not big on improvisation. So even when his two stars wanted to improvise, he would say, "No, let's do it this way." And I would be like, "Really?" Because I thought that was funnier than the line that was written. Okay, so he wouldn't let them improvise. So I hardly tried to improvise at all. One time I said, "How about if I say no horsing off?" When I told him, "You stay over there and no horsing off." Because I thought it'd be funny. He was like, "What does that mean?" I was like, "You've never heard somebody say no horsing off or no horsing around?" "No." Okay. So it was fun. It was funny. A lot of laughs. But there were a lot of torturous aspects to it. The bubble wrap jumpsuit in, I think it was 119 or 121 degree weather. Some of the hottest recorded weather in the San Fernando Valley when we were recording that.
Oh, that just sounds like hell.
Yeah.
It's weird that no horsing around and then buckaroo.
Somehow horses have always been there. I'm from Missouri originally, so some Southern expressions have kind of found their way into my way of speaking, and when I'm home and I never really had an accent, but when I'm home hanging out with people in mid Missouri, central Missouri, where I went to college, I start growing a little bit of an accent for a while. I have more of, I think, a like a Wisconsin, Chicago sort of an accent most of the time. But I do get a little bit Southern when I'm back there and drunk.
No, I get that completely because my dad immigrated to Canada when he was 8 from the UK. And so I've been over with him a couple times over there, and legit within a week, he starts talking in his British accent. And even after a few weeks, I started having a bit of an accent as well, because I guess it's the blood in me or something like that. But I completely get where you're coming from on that. Bill, the last thing I kind of want to talk to you about, what is the future look like for Bill? What is the landscape for you? Because obviously we're dealing with COVID times and we're dealing with a bunch of not fun stuff, but like TikTok's still going to be a big thing. Also going to shout out Bill's cameo. Get Bill to tell you to get detention. I got one for free in the comments and TikTok, which I want to take a screenshot and frame it, to be completely honest with you. But, but yeah, what are you up to next?
Well, I'm working on 2 different movies. I'm going to be in May. I'm going to be shooting a movie called Mid-Century Modern, and it's kind of like a thriller, like Get Out. So I can't say that much about it. It's a smaller role, but I kind of play a not so good guy. And there's another movie called Colorblind. It's a romantic comedy, and that role is kind of expanding the more we do it. A very, very talented friend of mine is writing and directing the project, Tamala D'Amico. And so working on those 2 movie projects. Then there's another movie project called Happy Bobby Gulliver that's going to be shooting in Chicago. So I believe they're funded for a whole first season. It's kind of like an independently funded series, and we'll see what happens with that. They've been waiting. It keeps on getting pushed down the line because of COVID. So God, please, everybody, wear your mask. That's on the horizon, as well as there's a movie that I'm attached to right now, and it's in development, called Time Girl, and that's kind of a it's a very interesting movie involving Amelia Earhart. Imagine like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but with young women of color. So that's kind of where they're headed with Time Girl, and
Okay.
I'm really excited to be a part of that. Where I may be, I can't talk too much about it, but I'm probably be playing a Sasquatch.
Out of all the things you could have said, Sasquatch wasn't even on the list. Bill, this has been fantastic. I really want to thank you for taking the time and for responding to my stupid TikTok and making this happen, because I never expected that a year from starting the podcast to now I'd be sitting down and having a conversation with you. So this has been fantastic. Where can people find you and what you're doing?
On TikTok, they can find me at Bill Chott, Chott. They can find me at Bill Chott on Twitter. Just regular old Bill Chott on Facebook. And I'm on YouTube, but I'm not really active there. So they can see some crazy experimental stuff I've done on YouTube. But and if they're interested in taking an improv class, I offer improv classes online via Zoom at theimprovtrick.com.
And that's it. Thank you guys again for 1 year of a chat with Matt. Thank you to Bill Chott for hanging out with me, and just this has been the weirdest, but also one of the most interesting and amazing years of my life. So thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next week with a new episode. Take it easy. Peace.